Suppose you people are working in an industry where lot of water is used, right? For example, those water become waste at the end. Those water may contain lot of metallic values like lot of iron, lot of cadmium. You understand, if you discharge those water into the ponds or nearby river, what will happen? You have any idea? The water contamination will be there, right? Water contamination. Have you ever heard about biological magnification? Any idea? That is a very interesting concept, biological magnification. Magnification means it is blowing up or it is growing in a large amount. Biological means biology, you understand, right? What exactly happens? Suppose the water contain lead, for example. The water contain lead. Lead is toxic or non-toxic? Toxic, right? So the moment the water will contain lead, the fish will drink that water obviously. So suppose very little amount of lead is there in the water and the fish is taking the water. So what will happen? The moment the lead will go into the fish body, it will magnify. Magnify because sometimes suppose it is 1 ppm, it will become 10 ppm, for example. You can understand, it is very interesting. And some of you are non-vegetarian obviously, right? You eat fish. And if you eat that fish, what will happen? Your body will also, the lead will go into your body, fine? And it will magnify in your body. It will become, suppose 100 ppm automatically. That is very interesting. That is called biological magnification. You understand? And you will get toxified obviously. Lot of toxin will be there in your body. Water content 1 ppm, but the moment you are taking the fish, in your body it will be 100 ppm. Right? 1 ppm, 10 ppm, now 100 ppm. So that is a problem. So the point is what? Before discharging the water, wastewater into the pond or nearby river, right? It should be purified. It should be the heavy metals like lead, cadmium, iron, many things should be removed out first. That can be done by using this cementation method. This is a very interesting method. You do not have to use any kind of electricity. That is the main benefit. Electricity is not required. Right? So you should understand these metallic values or these heavy metals will be present in form of ions, basically metal ions. Suppose cadmium ions, iron ions, positive ions basically. These are metals. So metals remain in positive ions basically because they lose electron easily. It is okay, right? Because metals are electropositive. They release electron easily, right? And the concept is precipitation. Precipitation means what? Suppose a water contains some metallic values in soluble form. Soluble form means in ionic form, right? Suppose iron is present. So iron will be in Fe2 plus form in water, but it is in soluble form. But you want to take out that iron from the water. Unless until it will become solid, you cannot take it out. So if you want to make it solid, non-soluble, you have to reduce it. That means Fe2 plus iron should become Fe, right? Elemental form means it is solid basically. Ionic form means it is soluble. It is okay up to this, right? So that means you have to do reduction. Obviously Fe2 plus become Fe, that is a reduction process. You are adding electron. Fe2 plus needs 2 electrons to become Fe, that is a reduction process. So that means cementation or contact reduction is basically a precipitation process where soluble metallic ions will become insoluble or ions become element. Up to this it is okay, right? Let me give a best example of this. Suppose you have a container. Suppose you have a container, and in that container you have, suppose, Cu2 plus ion. Right? Lot of Cu2 plus ion is here, and this is an aqueous solution. Aqueous solution is water will be there and these ions will be there. It is okay, right? I am showing water like this. Okay, let me do the different color. So we have an aqueous solution containing copper ions. In the real situation, what you can do? You can take water, you can take copper sulfate. The moment you add copper sulfate into water, it will become soluble, right? Copper sulfate will dissociate into copper ions, Cu2 plus ions, sulfate ions. Fine. So you maybe it also contains sulfate ions. Fine. Anyway, I am not writing sulfate ions. I am showing only copper ions, Cu2 plus. So now these Cu2 plus ions are in soluble form. The copper sulfate has completely dissolved into the solution. You will not find any precipitate or solid particles. But at the end, you want copper. You want copper from out of this. So what you need to do? What I have told you have to convert it into elemental form. Cu2 plus should be converted to Cu. So we can do cementation process to get this copper or to recover this copper from this copper sulfate aqueous solution. Right? What I need to do is very simple. I will choose a iron electrode or iron rod simply or rod of steel. This is iron. So if I will immerse a rod of iron or electrode, you are saying, right? Electrode of iron into this aqueous solution containing copper ions, what will happen? This iron will start dissolve into this aqueous solution and copper ions will reduce to copper and it will deposit on this iron surface. It is okay? Two things will be happening. One is Cu2 plus will become Cu, right? And this iron Fe will become Fe2 plus. Right? So that means iron is becoming iron ions. That means it is getting solid. But copper ions is becoming copper. It is coming out as a solid. And those solid will be precipitate on like this. On the electrode or on. So it will be covered with, slowly covered with, this one is Cu. Okay. But the iron, this iron will go into the solution. With time. Right? With time will go into the solution. So you people have heard about that is displacement reaction simply. Right? Displacement. That means here iron is displacing copper from the aqueous solution. Obviously, iron is getting soluble, copper is coming out. That is solid. So why this is happening? Now what is the concept behind this? The concept behind this is you have to immerse that electrode or that rod which have high oxidation potential. So that means what? Iron has high oxidation potential compared to that of the copper. It is okay? So can anybody guess if I will immerse a zinc into this solution? Can copper be precipitated out? Answer is yes. Zinc have high oxidation potential. If I will immerse an aluminium, for example, again the process will happen because aluminium has high oxidation potential. You people have to remember those metals which are more reactive or more active, those have high oxidation potential. Those metals which are less reactive or unreactive, those have less oxidation potential. It is okay? Fine? You can. Why I have chosen iron? Because iron is less expensive as compared to zinc, aluminium, and any other metal like sodium, potassium, lithium. They have high oxidation potential. But those are very more reactive and those are expensive. Right? You do not require any electricity to do this. That is the benefit of this process. It is okay? Why is this contact reduction? Can anybody guess? The process itself is same. Contact is there, right? There is a contact between iron rod and this aqueous solution by getting copper ions. Contact reduction. And reduction is going on. How reduction is going on? You understand? This is the overall reaction. Cu2 plus 2 electron. And this electron is coming out from, right? This is going here. When iron will form Fe2 plus, it will release 2 electrons. That electron will be taken away by Cu2 plus. You people have understood this one? And why this is called cementation process? Because the deposition of copper will take place on the surface only, not inside. It will not diffuse into the iron rod. It will remain on the surface. You can remove it just by scrubbing it. You can remove those copper. If you perform this experiment, can you conclude how you can get that this process has occurred? Just by looking at the color. Copper sulfate solution color is somewhat bluish, right? So what will happen? The color will change. Initially copper sulfate solution is bluish. The moment copper will start depositing on the iron rod, the color will change to greenish somewhat. Why? Because iron sulfate is greenish in color, basically. You understand? And how you want that this cementation process is going on? Just by looking at the color of the iron rod. Iron rod color is like silvery color, kind of silvery grey. But the moment copper will deposit, it becomes reddish brown. You have seen the copper wax in your home, reddish brown kind of color will change. You can get this. So this is your experiment 1, right? So experiment 1 can be modified. We can do 2 modification to get the kinetics of the process. What is the meaning of kinetics? In kinetics, what we study?
Rate of reaction.
Speed or rate of the process. How fast the process is going on. Slow or fast, or slow or very fast, right? So to do the kinetics, you can do 2 things. You can modify the pH. pH means suppose I will add some acid into copper sulfate. The pH will change. It will become acidified. Right? You can perform that experiment by adding some acids to see the kinetics, right? And second modification you can do by changing the temperature. You do this experiment at room temperature and you can do the experiment at 50 degrees centigrade or 60 degrees centigrade. We have hot plate in our department. You place the container on a hot plate, it will rise the temperature. You can measure the temperature of the solution by using thermometer, right? Suppose you want to perform the experiment at 60 degrees, you can manage the 60 degrees centigrade in the solution and you can perform the experiment. But it has been seen that by rising the temperature, the kinetics has been increased. You can perform that, right? You can do what? You first perform the experiment in room temperature and you can measure, how can you measure how much amount of copper will deposit? You can measure the weight. You take the initial weight of the iron rod. After deposition, after 10 minutes or after half an hour, you can measure the weight of the iron rod again. It has been increased. Same thing you do what? You take same half an hour, you take temperature of 60 degree and again you measure the weight of the iron rod. If you find the weight of the iron rod is higher, that means kinetics is higher. Copper is depositing at a higher rate. It is okay. Similarly, you can perform the experiment using simple copper sulfate. Then you can modify it with some acids. You can add some HCl or you can add some sulfuric acid. Better add some sulfuric acid. Then you can do the experiment and you can check the weight of the rod. You will get that when the weight of the rod is higher, kinetics is higher. It is okay. So this is a very interesting process. Similarly, if you take a hard water or industrial water which contain lot of metallic values or metallic ions, right? You dip some iron rod or you dip some any aluminum rod, it will collect the impurities. Right? The metals will get deposited on the aluminum electrode or iron rod, depending upon the electrode potential. Right? So this concept, the principle behind this process is the metal which have high oxidation potential will go into the solution, and the metal which have low electrode potential will deposit or precipitate out. It is okay. It is fine now. It's fine. 10 minutes, after 15 minutes or after half an hour, you can measure the weight of the rod again. It is not true. You have to check it. Suppose you are doing for 30 minutes, perhaps all the particles will report. If you do for 5 minutes, all the particles will not report. Okay, now the question is, up to what time this process will go on? This process will go on for a lot of time or it will stop. This process will actually stop after some time. Why? Because, can anybody guess why it will stop? See, 2 things are happening. Iron ions is going into the solution, copper ion is getting reduced and deposited.
Because copper is getting deposited on the electrode, so ions can't come out.
It is simple thermodynamic concept. Thermodynamics concept is what? After some time, sir, very good. Initially, can see. Okay, let's start. See what happens exactly. Initially, the concentration of copper is higher in the aqueous solution, right? But the moment you dip it, you are dipping an iron rod, the amount of copper is getting reduced slowly with time. Similarly, your potential also changes. Initially, this solution has lot of copper, so oxidation potential of copper is less, oxidation potential of iron is high in the first condition. With the process, with the time, what happens? The iron is going into the solution and copper is coming out. So what happens? The oxidation potential will change slowly, and finally it will become equal. Oxidation potential is written like this: Cu by Cu2 plus by Cu. You can write like this: Cu by Cu2 plus. This is the oxidation potential of copper. That will be equal to Fe by. When this will become this, the process will stop. You understood now?
Yes.
Initially this was higher. That's why copper is getting deposited slowly, right? And iron is going into the solution. The concentration of iron is increasing in the solution. So that's why this potential will become equal to this potential. Then the reaction will stop. The driving force is the difference in the oxidation potential. You understood? That is the driving force. You people have understood this concept, right? You can perform this experiment with anything, right? Suppose you have any other metals, you have to choose. So how to do this experiment? You have to look into the electropotential series, EMF series, electrochemical series. Suppose for metallurgy you will choose this electropotential series, and we have here suppose hydrogen, right? Above some elements will be there, below some elements will be there. Why hydrogen is here? Because the electropotential of hydrogen is taken as 0. Standard hydrogen electrode, SH. Arbitrarily it is taken as 0 electron. Suppose 0 electron volt or 0 volt or millivolt or 0 volt. So you have some elements over here and you have some elements below this. So if you go like this, then what will happen to the oxidation potential? Increases. You have to remember. From bottom to top, the electrode potential means I am talking about oxidation potential, not reduction potential. The oxidation potential increases. Suppose copper is here. This is suppose Ag, silver. This is Au, gold, and this is Pt, platinum. That means platinum has low oxidation potential, gold has high oxidation potential. If you compare these two, right? And above this you will be having suppose zinc, you will be having iron, you will be having suppose aluminium, magnesium, calcium, and suppose lithium like this. This is arbitrary series. This is not the right answer, but still this is fine. That means I have chosen this one to take out. You can see this has high oxidation potential, this has low oxidation potential. So you can choose aluminium, magnesium, calcium, and lithium for recovering the copper from the solution. So can I choose gold to recover copper? No, because gold has lower oxidation potential. It is not possible. And difference between oxidation potential and reduction potential is the change in sign. Magnitude will be remain same. Suppose it is 3 volt, oxidation potential is plus 3 volt, then reduction potential is minus 3 volt. Right? That is the difference. When you are studying corrosion, basically, in that condition we basically choose reduction potential series to make the process easy or to understand the process. But when we are doing any extractive processes like this, we always look into oxidation potential series to make the process easy or to understand the process easily. It is okay now? Fine. And another important point you have to remember, higher is the oxidation potential, it is easy to go into the solution. The metal which have high oxidation potential, they will easily lose electron and they will easily dissolve into the aqueous solution. And just opposite. Fine? Okay, you can stop it. Experiment 2 is basically for measuring specific gravity or density easily. Suppose your mom want to measure some density of some substance, right? and she has given you some substance and she asked how you can easily measure easily, right? Because why I am talking about density? Because we have a subject called mineral processing. Already you have studied that, I think, right? We want to measure the density of different minerals. Suppose, for example, you are working in an industry and you are working in a raw material department. Raw material department means you will deal with raw materials. Suppose you want to, your industry is manufacturing pig iron, for example, iron. So you need a raw materials of what? Hematite, obviously, ore of iron, hematite. And you don't know how to measure density, for example. So maximum chance will be what? The supplier may cheat you. He will supply something else, or he will supply mixture of hematite and some stones which will look similar. The appearance may be same, brownish color or red color, right? So how to identify whether this is ore of iron or something else? If you know how to measure the density, you can compare the density with the standard value. In the textbooks or in the books, the standard value of density will be given for the iron ore. You do an experiment to measure the density of the supplied iron ore. If it will be same, you will confirm that yes, it is iron ore. It is not something else. It is fine. You will not get cheated. Right? So you should know how to measure the density very quickly or easy way. That is the experiment. Very simple experiment. Right? We know that basically. Okay, the topic is measurement of density. Measurement of density of minerals or any substance, solid substance. And we people know that density is equal to weight by volume or mass by volume. This is a simple formula we have. Density is equal to mass by volume. This is a simple formula for weight by volume. So what we will do here, and we understand density of water is equal to mass of water by volume of water. I will not tell the answer right now. I will ask a question. So suppose now the formula is known. Right? To measure the mass, we have a weight balance. You put the sample, it will give you some grams, or basically we measure the weight in grams. We take very small sample. The very interesting point about density is what? Density is a intensive property or extensive property? Intensive or extensive? You have studied thermodynamics.
Extensive.
You people you should be confident enough. Intensive. How many of you are saying extensive? Only 2 people extensive. It is basically intensive. See, intensive property means those properties are independent of the size of the sample or mass of the sample basically, or volume of the sample. You take a lot of volume, but density never change. Density will remain same. If I will take this much of iron ore and this much of iron ore, the density will remain same. It doesn't affected by the amount of substance you have taken. How to remember? Intensive means I for intensive, I for independent. That's all. It is a very simple way to remember. Extensive property means those properties which depend upon the amount of sample or volume of sample you are taking. You know the answers anyway. Now, suppose the laboratory instructor will give you a sample, any mineral. Suppose silica, for example, silica or quartz. Quartz is a crystalline form of silica, right? Standard value of silica will be given in the textbook, right? Now you have to measure the density, whether it is really silica or not. So what do you have to do? First of all, you have to measure the weight by using a weight balance. You can write now weight is this much gram, for example. What is the next step? To do the next step, to find out the volume, you need a container, a beaker containing water, simply. And the water should be a distilled water because it will be free from any ions. Otherwise the density may change. If you take the sea water and normal tap water, the density will be different. Why? The sea water with a lot of metallic ions, sodium ions, calcium ions. It becomes somewhat higher density. You understood? So better to take a aquaguard water or better to take distilled water. That will be more enough. Better. Fine. You take a beaker containing water, right? Then next step will be what? You tie the mineral with a thread, and the thread should have negligible weight. Very very thin thread you can take and you tie it, right? Then you have to immerse the mineral into the water. And the most important point is, while immersing the ore should, or the mineral or the ore should not touch the water. That is more important. If you touch it, the calculation will be completely wrong. Why I am saying? Let me tell you here. Suppose this is the container having, this is the water, distilled water, fine, and this is a beaker. And now, suppose by help of a thread, you have, this is the ore you have used. Remember, while doing experiment, you should not immerse the ore up to the bottom. If I will, okay, fine. So before doing this one, you take a beaker containing water and you place that beaker on the weight balance again. So it will show a weight and you make it 0. You know how to make it 0 by doing tab. There is an option called TAR. If you press the tab, it will become 0 again. Right? This is the situation. This is the weight balance. Now you have placed this one. This is not there. And it will show some reading. It will show some reading. And you press the option tab, it will again become 0. The container will be there with water, but weight will be showing 0 now. Now the moment you put this one, what will happen? It will again start showing some reading. But if you place this one over here, what will happen? It will show the weight of ore again. You understand my point? If you allow the ore to touch, the reading will be the weight of the ore again. You have already taken the weight of the ore. What is the need of that? We need volume. No, mass is already known. We need volume of the ore. So better to keep the ore immersed, but not completely. Not completely means it should not touch this one, but it should be immersed at least like this. What level is this one? So how much amount of volume of water will be displaced? That will be equal to the volume of the ore itself. The amount of water displaced by the ore will be equal to the amount of volume of the ore itself. Same हो जाएगा, right? And we know that density of water is how much? Mass of water by volume of water. And density of water we take 1. Everybody knows the density of water is 1. So 1 is equal to mass of water by volume of water. So then mass of water is equal to volume of water, right? And you got a reading over here. You got a reading, right? That reading will show you what? The amount of water displaced. That is the volume of water, and volume of water will be equal to the volume of the ore itself or mineral itself. So the reading will obtained will be what? Now, that is volume of water. Because this one is the relation. Now we can put the formula. Already we have taken the mass by weight balance. Then volume of water is equal to this one. You will obtain here LD. Actually, you will get a mass that is equal to volume. No, you understand my point? That will not show you any volume. That will show you some gram. But by mistake, if you allow this one to touch, it will show you again the weight of the ore only, not the volume. It is okay now. So this is a very simple way. It will take hardly 5 minutes to do this. Okay, last experiment number 3. I'll stop it. Anyways, let me talk about something about this previous experiment. Why sometimes it is needed to measure the density of mineral? Any answer from you? From mineral processing at least? How it will benefit you? How measuring the density of the mineral or many minerals or gangue, for example, how it will benefit for mineral processing?
You can separate them.
Yeah, you can separate by gravity concentration, right? Gravity concentration depends upon the density of the mineral. You should understand, basically density of the gangue is less, but density of the valuable metals are more, right? Suppose silica is present in the iron ore. If you take a very pure iron ore which do not contain any silica, You can measure the density, it will be higher, and you can measure density of silica. Density of silica will be very less. It is something 2.6, like that. Density of silica is 2.6, but density of iron ore will be like above 5. You can separate them. If you know the density of gangue, density of minerals, you can separate them by using gravity concentration. Right? One will. Do you remember how gravity concentration works? Suppose you have a glass container containing water, and I will allow some mineral to float, or I will allow some mineral to settle. So what will happen? How you can separate gangue out of this valuable mineral? All are in powder form. After grinding, you are doing that. Let me see how many of you remember. You understood my point? You have a container containing water, and you allow powder mineral to pass through the water. It should settle. How the gangue will get separated? Because this powder contains gangue as well as the valuable metals, right? Metals will, yeah. It depends upon settling velocity. There is a concept called terminal velocity. Terminal velocity is directly proportional to the density basically. Metallic values have high density, so they will acquire a high terminal velocity or high settling velocity. They will settle fast. But the gangue will remain still in floating conditions because their density is less. So they have low settling velocity or they have low terminal velocity. So it will take more time to settle for the gangue, but for main metallic values they will settle fast. That's why you might have known those underflow and overflow. How many of you remember underflow and overflow? That is done during your classification or during your concentration processes. Anybody remember? There is an overflow and underflow. Overflow will be what? Overflow will be your gangues because they are lighter. They will come out from the water or liquid medium, right? But underflow means they will pass away. They are heavy now. They will pass away. They will go to the bottom. In the bottom, you can collect the valuable minerals, and from the top, you can collect the gangue. That is very simple way. Hydrocyclone, you might have studied. You remember or what? Hydrocyclone, that works on this principle only. Okay, I was not the right time. Last experiment is about. Okay, what we basically fed into the blast furnace. A flux is required, you have remember. Flux is what? We use limestone. So do you remember directly we are using limestone or we are using lime? We are using lime. Rather than limestone, we basically fed lime into the furnace as a flux. That is CaO. Limestone is CaCO2. But the question is why? Okay, we can feed directly in limestone. What is the problem with that? Can anybody guess? I have uploaded a video on the same concept. Two different blast furnaces will be there. In one blast furnace you feed CaCO3, in another blast furnace you feed CaO. What is the difference? Which kind of reaction? Better reaction will happen. See, to run any kind of reactor, you need some heat that will come out by burning fuels, right? Right? The problem is what? If you fed limestone, CaCO3 directly, it will undergo calcination. Calcination means thermal decomposition of an ore. You have to remember the simple definition of calcination. Calcination means thermal decomposition of an ore. A single compound will break down into its own constituents. CaCO3 will break down into CaO plus CO2. How? By heating. Just by heating. There is a decomposition temperature that is called calcination temperature. If you heat that ore to that calcination temperature, it will break down into its own constituents. Right? Basically for limestone it is 850 to 900. Basically 850. I have done a calculation also. You can have a look to the YouTube video today. It is a very small video, 6 to 7 minutes. While sleeping you can watch it, no problem. So what I am saying, okay fine. So if you fed CaCO3 into the blast furnace, what will happen? Calcination will happen. But if you fed lime, there will be no calcination. You understand? If calcination will be happening, it is an highly endothermic process. Endothermic process means what? It needs some heat. So it will consume the heat. It is not good. You want the heat should be utilized for reduction, for melting. There is concept called smelting, right? Iron ore production is smelting process because you are feeding solid iron ore, you are getting a liquid iron. Melting has happened and reduction has happened. It is okay. That is called smelting, reduction and melting, right? But we need heat for melting and reduction. But if your heat will get consumed during calcination, it is a problem. Obviously, it is a problem. Obviously, you need more heat. The consumption of fuel will increase. It makes the process expensive. Rather than limestone, you feed lime. You understand my point? Similarly, in steel making process also, we are feeding lime, not limestone, to make the process effective, to make the process economic. Anyways, so what I am discussing, differential calcination. What exactly happens? There are certain kind of ores contains two different carbonates. Anybody remember? Two carbonates will be together. Any formula you remember? CaCO3 is a simple carbonate. It contains only calcium carbonate. Any carbonate which contains two different, not bicarbonate. Bicarbonate means it will contain hydrogen. That is sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. Okay, this is a formula. CaCO3 dot. This is technically called dolomite. This is also a flux. You have to remember. Limestone is not a flux. Limestone is a flux. This is also a flux. Why? Because this contains also calcium carbonate. And magnesium carbonate can also be used as a flux. You remember what is the function of flux? Anybody remember? What flux do actually? It will react with the gangue to form slag. Right? Gangue has to be removed from the ore. How it can be removed? Only by adding flux. And flux function is it will preferentially react with the gangue. It will never react with any other thing. Okay, anyway. So this is called dolomite. So this is an ore of magnesium actually. This is an ore of magnesium. Magnesium available in this form. And you want magnesium, for example. Suppose I want magnesium out of this. How to do that? You can do that by differential calcination process. Or in other way I can say you can separate two carbonates by doing differential calcination. Right? Basically, for simple calcium carbonate, which is limestone, the calcination temperature and decomposition temperature are same. That means if you heat the CaCO3 at 850, it will decompose into CaO and CO2. Right? And CO2 will get removed. But calcination temperature for magnesium carbonate is less, very less. It is nearly 417 degrees centigrade. Is okay? That means it will decompose into what? It is okay? Fine? But the problem is what both are together now. They are chemically bonded. Into means chemically bonded. There is a chemical bond. You cannot break it easily. You cannot separate them by mineral processing. Because mineral processing is a which method? Physical process. We are doing crushing, grinding, right? All by physical method. No chemical reaction is happening. And this is a chemical process actually. So okay fine. Now question is if I will heat this one at 417 degrees centigrade. What will happen? Can anybody tell me the product? What kind of product you will get? Yes.
Calcium carbonate, magnesium oxide and carbon dioxide.
So this product will be like this. CaCO3. Nothing will happen to CaCO3 because its decomposition temperature is 850 and temperature is only 470. But this temperature is enough to decompose this one. So it will undergo decomposition. So it will become fine. This is the product. Suppose I will decompose this one at 850 now. What will happen? So it will form CO okay plus okay CO2 MgO plus CO2, right? So you understood the two difference, 417 degree calcination and 850 degree calcination. But our point is to separate them. In this step or in the previous step, you cannot separate them, right? You have to do another process also, that is hydrometallurgy process. So first step is pyrometallurgy, because calcination is a pyrometallurgical process. So next step will be hydrometallurgical process. What is the main step of the hydrometallurgical process? What is the first step? Do you remember? After crushing and grinding, forget about crushing and grinding. The first step of hydrometallurgy? Leaching. Very good. Leaching. Leaching means what? Dissolution. You have to dissolve the compound into aqueous solution. Acids, water, alkali water, right? So now the thing is what? If you are doing calcination at this temperature, this is the product, and you are doing hydrometallurgy on it, you are doing leaching, what will happen? Both are oxides, so both will get soluble, right? Both will get soluble. So you have to remember, if metal oxides will remain in metal oxide form, basically they get soluble into the water. Have you ever met an accident and you got any fracture in your bones?
Yes, sir.
You got. So earlier you have seen that they use this lime water. That particular band will be inside the lime water and they will make a band-aid. And the moment the water will get evaporate, it will become hard, solid. Anyways, so that means lime is also soluble in water and magnesium oxide will become soluble. You cannot separate them. So you want to separate them, how to separate them? If you do differential calcination. So what you need to do? Instead of 850 you do suppose 500 degrees centigrade or 600 degrees centigrade. What will happen? The product will be what? CaCO3 will remain as CaCO3, because unless until you reach 850 it will not decompose, right? So it will be CaCO3 dot MgO plus, right? This is the reaction. Now you got an oxide, you got an carbonate. Now if you do leaching, that is a hydrometallurgical process, what will happen? This CaCO3 will not soluble. It will not become soluble. Why? It is carbonate. But this is oxide. It will become soluble. Very easy. One remain insoluble, it is carbonate. One becomes soluble. Then in the third step, you need a filter paper, simply, or some filtration device through which you pass the solution. What will happen? The soluble MgO will get removed, and on the filter paper, you will be a solid CaCO3. It is okay? Now this is called differential calcination. So you have to remember, whenever you want differential calcination, you have to check the temperature of the decomposition temperature of each carbonate first. And you need to do calcination at a temperature above the decomposition temperature of the lower one, like this one, and below this one. You understood my point? That is differential. Okay, suppose finally this in your glass container you have a soluble MgO. How to get magnesium carbonate out of this? What will be the reaction? Very good, excellent. You need to pass CO2 gas into this MgO solution. It will form what? MgCO2. But in the aqueous solution, what is the composition? What is the? It contains what exactly? Magnesium hydroxide. MgO will react with water to form magnesium hydroxide. Obviously, magnesium hydroxide is called what? Milk of magnesia. Milk of magnesia you can use. Suppose you got some acidity in your stomach, right? You can drink some milk of magnesia. It will be fine. Why? Milk of magnesia is alkaline, and your stomach is acidic, for example. But don't try that. Better to consult a doctor. Don't become a doctor by yourself. Anyway, you understood my point? Finally, after passing CO2 into the magnesium hydroxide solution, you will get magnesium carbonate. Now you have a calcium carbonate, single calcium carbonate, and you have a single magnesium carbonate. You have separated them by easily. So first step is differential calcination. Next step will be hydrometallurgy, that is leaching, and third step is filtration. And fourth step, if you want to write, you can write by passing CO2 into the magnesium hydroxide. It will become magnesium carbonate, solid magnesium carbonate. Now dissolved magnesium hydroxide has become solid, precipitate out just by passing carbon dioxide. Okay,